to the Phoenix Rise podcast. Claire here, your host. So happy to have you with us. If you're new here, welcome to the tribe. If you are a regular, welcome on back. You are safe and you are at home. This is the place where we talk all things spirituality, mindset, and business. Yes, and business. I know. Who knew? You get to have it all because there is no sacrifice needed over here, babe. It is 3D and 5D, awakening and ambition, success and spirituality. Best of all worlds is where it is at. And I am still on my trailblazing path of having incredible guests on the podcast because I'm just loving this as much as you guys are, right? It's more fun for me. I get to be like you in the audience and really consume as well. So it's really amazing. And today we have got the beautiful Brooke with us. Brooke, please do introduce yourself.
Well, thank you. What a fun introduction. I love that. Yes, my name is Brooke Leavitt, and I am a pleasure coach, which I don't think there's too many of us in the world. And I'm happy to kind of talk about what that is, but I suspect it's going to come out in the wash while we talk about everything today.
I love it. I'm already intrigued. So just so you guys know, listening, me and Brooke we're in each other's orbits, but we don't know each other that well. So I am going to be one of the audience, right? I am one of you guys learning all about Brooke's world. So she is going to give it to us real time. I'm going to be right there with you, listening eagerly to what she has to say, because from what I see of your world, Brooke, like it has me intrigued and I would love to know. Yeah, please do unpack. What is a pleasure coach? I mean, I have images going around in my mind. I'm right or not. So go on, unpack that for us.
Well, I love that it, conjures images because that was the entire intention. So I absolutely coach specifically to the topic of pleasure, but that is not only about sex. And in fact, it's usually it's a part, but it's not the major part for most people's lives, but it does perk us up a little bit and get us a little curious. And curiosity is something that's central to what I talk about. And so, it's a bit of a playful title intentionally. And I think anything that can kind of get us a little bit more curious or pique our interest is a good thing in a modern world where we're just inundated with kind of the same shit all the time.
Yeah. I'm with you there. It's like it's standing out from the crowd, right? And really making your mark. I love that. So, okay, so unpack that a little bit. What does that involve when you're working with people?
Yes. So what I found when working with clients historically is that, you can tell them to stop doing 1,000 different things, but what happens when you remove things from people's lives is they're left with not much. And it's really a scary place to be. And like, no one wants to live in a place where like all their favorite things have been taken away from them. I mean, it's like you do that to punish children, right? It's like take away their toys and send them to their room. I mean, that's what my parents used to do to me. I don't do that with my kids. Children. Yes.
I'm with you.
Yeah, so like we wouldn't want to do that to adults when we're trying to transform our lives. And so I really focus on how do we go through these major transformations, knowing that things will have to change, which sometimes feels ouchy, and then adding in some yummy stuff along the way. Well, lots of yummy stuff along the way, so we can actually get to those goals. Because in my experience, a life of deprivation has not gotten me to where I want to go. Usually it leads me down the wrong path, even if I think I'm doing the quote unquote right thing. So that's where it really started. And most of what I talk about is a low dopamine lifestyle. So I can kind of explain that for y'all here, but I do have to geek out a little bit.
Yeah, no, let's do it, because I've heard you talk about this a little bit and I'm like, it's one of those things where I'm intrigued and I'm like, okay, I really like the sound of this, but I don't understand it. So yeah, please do give us the geek. We want it all.
Okay, awesome. Because this is one of my very favorite topics, and not just because it's about what I do day in, day out, but I've been obsessed with this since I was old enough to be able to read these words. Okay.
So I will be like the human. So if there's terms that like I'm not understanding, yes, we will unpack that.
Please do that. I try to describe everything I do as if I was talking to my grandmother, which usually works, but please let me know if I've not achieved that goal. Bear in mind, my grandmother's a very intelligent woman, but that said, it's nice to think about. All right, so dopamine is a neurotransmitter, and that means it's a endogenous chemical, so it comes from our own bodies that's secreted in our brain, and it helps our brain cells, which are called neurons, talk to each other. It's really, really, really simple. You have totally heard about these before. Think about adrenaline, serotonin, endorphins. Like none of these words are probably new to you, but you may not have known that they were all in the same class. So they're all neurotransmitter. So is dopamine. And oftentimes we hear it referred to as like the feel-good hormone and or maybe the pleasure neurotransmitter. Oftentimes you'll hear about it in relation to addiction. So that's kind of where people usually hear about it for the first time. But dopamine is not only linked to pleasure, it's related to desire. And that's kind of where we get to play a lot. Because if you think about it, we obviously desire what pleases us. Yeah, this is pretty simple math. And this is where we get a little geeky. So we desire what quote unquote pleases us, which you can measure in the brain by how many chemicals are released and in what quantity. So it's really like how much juice are we getting out of an experience in our brain over years. So repeated exposure to the same stimuli, and then how much emotion we're really experiencing while we're doing whatever it is that we're doing. So it's kind of a mathematical equation that we're totally unaware of, but we all know what pleasure feels like. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So like for me, maybe it's eating a cookie. For somebody else, maybe it's watching a sports game or drinking like a really nice glass of wine. You know, we get it from different sources.
Right.
So dopamine is related to desire and pleasure, but the desire piece is interesting because we often look forward to something for a longer time period than we actually do the thing, right? We look forward to the weekend. We look forward to our next vacation, having sex, a really good meal, I don't know, a night out with the girls, a quiet night in with a good book. It goes on and on and on. It could be business milestones. It could be something simple, not simple. That's not the right word, but I'm thinking of like just receiving love, adoration, praise. I mean, these are really, really big things, but we want it, right? We desire that stuff, and the wanting of it lasts longer than the getting of it. All right, so that's level one. Level two.
I'm with you so far. I'm like intently listening. Yeah.
Okay, good. Level one, we have passed on to level two.
A cup of a tea with biscuits.
All right, so dopamine, as you might imagine, is released in our brain all the time. So we've already mentioned some things that would produce dopamine in a typical person's brain, but also it comes from text messages, pings, emails, alerts, likes, comments on your materials, dating app matches, when someone smiles at you in the grocery store, when you go for a walk, watch a sunrise, watch a sunset, when you're in flow, when you're working on a project. I mean, it's coming from a lot of different places. And so you can see the breadth that of exposure that we have, and not only the breadth, but the amount.
Yeah.
So in our modern society, we're kind of flooded with dopamine. And generally in life, we don't want to be flooded like with anything, right? No. Like maybe love, you know, there's probably not
even
a way
then
to have
it can feel a bit too much, like you want to have some space. Yeah, I get that.
Yeah, exactly. And so if we're really operating at this high level, it creates some complications. So that's level two.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
We're good.
Level three, we have now introduced problems. All right. So we're swimming in dopamine all the time.
Yeah.
If you're swimming in dopamine all the time, how could you possibly experience real pleasure? How do you feel happy? How do you notice if something is like actually interesting to you?
Because it's like a baseline.
Yeah, because you have a new baseline. So we're really not intended to live at this 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10, this elevated level for every day, all day, right? But if you were really closer to like a 3 or a 4, which doesn't mean you would have any less pleasure. This is where it gets a little confusing. Yeah. But if you're at a lower level, then when you had a spike, like when you're, I don't know, if my grandma comes over and brings me fresh baked cookies, whoo, that's a big one, right? I would actually notice it.
Right.
Versus someone who's at an 8, when their partner is like, hey, babe, do you want to go for a walk? And their brain is like, no, that doesn't add anything. We get into trouble.
Oh, this is really good. Okay. So can I just ask you something that the audience might be thinking at the moment?
Yes.
I am. So when you say if we were living at like a 3 or a 4, what does that look like? So does that mean that we're sad?
No. So 0 out of 10 would be like neutral. Yeah. So you could go into the negative zone as well. So you can go all the way down. We'll just say a 10, negative 10.
Okay.
Which is interesting because a lot of the things that we consume, I don't know, let's just say if you're into partying and you go out and you go do MDMA that weekend or whatever, you actually get to a negative usually pretty quickly after that. And so you have this big recovery time. So if you're at a 3 or a 4, this is just like a nicer, pleasant kind of place to be playing around with.
It doesn't mean that you're feeling like crappy. Okay, that's great.
Yeah. And so the big thing here is that you would have this noticeable difference when things are actually happening to you because you're not flooded with this chemical.
I get that. Yeah.
And alternatively, it's really hard to notice if you are doing anything interesting if you're at that level. Okay. So I think we've covered that. That's the gist of it. And so with a low dopamine lifestyle, we're really looking to create a life that we can actually feel pleasure in, and it's like intentional. And so like who the fuck cares about this, right? Like what's the purpose? We're just trying to like live at a 3 or 4, and that's not really it. What comes along with this is lower anxiety because we're not dealing with as many unnecessary stressors. Side note, there's stressors all throughout life. I'm not saying you're not going to be stressed, but you won't be adding in like unnecessary ones. Like waking up hungover, that's a pretty useless way to move through any morning. You'll have increased energy levels, which is pretty rad for an adult. Like there's not that many times we get, I don't know if you know the spoon analogy, but like get extra spoons. The low dopamine lifestyle gives us extra spoons, more energy.
Okay.
It also reduces that desire to like take the edge off of life. I don't know if you've heard people say that. They're like, oh, I just need some way to like just take the edge off.
Yes.
Like, what the fuck are we doing? Like, why are we living lives that we have to? I mean, that sounds kind of PG, but sounds kind of PG, but it's really escapism. Like we're really trying to.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I know, I mean, I don't have it anymore at all. Like whilst I live in my purpose, but like back in the day when I was in the hustle and the grind and the burnout, it's like you live for the weekend. Right? Because you're just working to make money and it's like, I need a release. Like I need that kind of, like the pressure, take the pressure off.
Yeah. And we all do. Like we absolutely need that pressure release valve, but we need reliable ones. We need ones that actually let the pressure off slowly and surely versus like this whole. And then it basically just builds up the next second. So that's very much related to this. And then, like, you know, most importantly, people find that their relationships are really, really more satisfying. And we all know that, like, the number one indicator of health and longevity and satisfaction through life is our closest relationships. And this absolutely improves for basically everybody that is willing to try this lifestyle.
Yeah. I love that so much. So can you give us a little insight into maybe some of the things that you recommend for your clients? So what does this actually look like? Like, what are you recommending that they maybe cut out or that they add in? Or what are some of the kind of tangibles for people that might be interested?
Yeah, so I can absolutely talk to what I would recommend taking out. And then what we put in is very custom to each person. So I will kind of walk us through how we would figure that out. But that's kind of the fun part, is that this really isn't like a program where someone's like, here's what you do and you get this result. Like it's very much individual. And so it's really an interactive kind of, I think of it as a game. All right, so things that we would take out. So these are these like really massive spikes. So just as a point of comparison, and I don't suspect the majority of your audience does meth on a regular basis.
I would hope not.
I doubt it.
Get out of here.
But, you know, that chemical will produce 1,000% increase over baseline. That's massive. Yeah. So like chemicals like that are absolutely no-nos and go out the door. But interestingly, if we're just talking about base units, alcohol can create almost a 250 unit increase over baseline. That's a lot. That's 2.5 times the amount of an orgasm. So I'm not saying you can't do these things, but I would really recommend reducing exposure to drugs, exposure to alcohol, And then some of the things that we already kind of know are like, ugh, like doom scrolling. We would probably want to have a conversation about porn consumption. We would talk about online shopping, things of that nature. So these things that really like peak our dopamine levels. And then also we'd curate how much exposure you have to like all this like nonsense, like how many pings and just alerts you get on a daily basis.
That. I was like, yeah, because I'm one of these people, I won't have any notifications on my phone. So I take them off because they irritate me. If I look at my phone and I see like a little red circle with any number in it, I have to click it because I can't sit there. So I don't even allow them there. Like they're just not allowed. Like I turn them all off. Is that the kind of thing? Is that what you do? You recommend that?
For sure, I would recommend that, but I would even go further, right? So like, I mean, you're an entrepreneur, so like you probably check like some analytics, like how many views have you gotten on your latest reel? Like how many people have commented? Like how quickly did they comment? There's a lot of other things that we like kind of sneak in. That it creates dopamine when it feels compulsory. Yeah. When you feel like you don't have an option, like what you just said was like, I have to click the red alert. Well, similarly, like sometimes I get a little obsessed with like, how quickly can I get to 1,000 watches, whatever the number is. Like this is part of I can't tell you what's compulsory in your life, but we would figure it out in a conversation.
Oh my God, that is so interesting. So I just want to give a bit of context of like what's coming up for me here, because in case people are like having these thoughts. And I'm thinking about, I recently I think it's the beginning of January, I started a whole new Instagram account, right? So from scratch. But I've been toying with the idea for probably the best part of 6 months. And I couldn't release because I had this, I can't even explain it, this weird attachment to the numbers there. And it was like, I would go in every single day and fixate on the numbers to a point where it would either dysregulate me if it was lower than I wanted, or it would give me a high if it had gone up. It's like, how crazy is that? It's just numbers on a screen.
Yeah, it's definitely just numbers on a screen. But when you said like how crazy and how weird, I wouldn't classify it like that at all. This is our brain. It's very, 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 very adaptive. It will go seek out pleasure and avoidance of pain whenever possible. So actually like this number tracking is usually a form of pain reduction. And it's a little bit confusing, but if you think about uncertainty creating pain, then every time you look at something, even if it's not the number that you want, and like humans love certainty and we live in a very uncertain world. And so that's super adaptive. It just gets a little wacky when we're doing it 16 hours a day.
Yeah. Literally, it was very hard. Like looking back, like now I've released it and it's kind of like, what was the big deal? But when you're in it, oh my God, it was hard. And this sounds ridiculous. Like I'm saying these words and I'm like, this sounds ridiculous. Like it's a social media account, but
it doesn't sound ridiculous to me at all. And I think people could, if they swapped out the social media for, I mean, gosh, it could be anything. It could be their nightly glass of wine. Yeah, it could be so many different things. Oh gosh, I'm totally losing my train of thought, but you said something that I wanted to talk about. Oh, how quickly. So how long ago did you start your new Instagram account, out of curiosity?
About a month ago.
Okay, now. So that's beautiful. Like this is perfectly aligning to the data. So usually the first 2 weeks are ouchy when you're stepping away from something that has historically given you a lot of, I'm going to call it chemicals instead of pleasure, because I think that's more accurate. But usually by 30 days, if you're really consistent with it, you're going to start to feel some of these major benefits. And this is why, like all over my website, you'll see, this is not a quick fix. This is not a silver bullet. Like I'm so against snake oil because real life doesn't work like that. And this is definitely not one of those things where you get to do it once and it's a forever reset, but you will absolutely start to see benefits. Well, I would consider it a short amount of time. A month is a short amount of time.
Oh, God, yeah. If you consider that, like, everyone listening, like I struggled with this, and like Brooke said, you can put whatever your thing is into this, right? Whether it's that glass of wine, whether it's maybe smoking or, anything like that, anything that you're using as I suppose, a validation or a safety net or, whatever crutch that you use it for. It's like, insert that and then think about how hard it is. And it's like, I had one foot in both for a while. And I was like, I would spend a little bit of time in the new one and then I would go back. And it's just like, now I'm thinking about it, I'm like, yeah, it's the same thing as all of this stuff. It's like, okay, I'll stop for like a couple of days and then I'll go back. And it's that full on like break, isn't it? And then when you kind of come to that decision, like now is like done. And you've actually like, I think, made that final decision. There's no going back, it's done in your mind. And then it's building up, I guess, that new, what would you call it? That new baseline?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's very behaviorally related. And so like your specific one about social media or checking your business numbers would just be one of them. So so if you stop that, but you're still doing bumps of Coke in the bathroom every weekend, like this doesn't work the same. Just to be really clear. But it would be by behavior. And so that's an important piece of the puzzle, but it also works as a system, right? So if you're being really clean in one area, but really, I don't want to say naughty because I don't want to add like good or bad, but if you're still really indulging in some of these behaviors, it doesn't quite work. But you're really like, and I'm not really sure when everyone became a neuroscientist, but everyone's heard the words rewiring your brain. But truly, it is just reducing the myelin sheath that's around these neurons that speeds up the production of communication. So we're truly rewiring the brain, but it's kind of been bastardized in pop culture lately. But you could think of it like as a super highway that over time, like nature comes back in, there's cracks in the pavement, the animals start to use it again. And then you would kind of like track on a new game path, on a different pathway, but it takes time. Yeah, it does happen. It's very possible. Like our brains are very, adaptable and we learn all the time. That's all learning is rewiring your brain. And it's not like a special thing that our brain does. When you do something, it happens all the time. So that's good.
Oh my God, I love this so much. This is so interesting. So, Brooke, I mean, obviously we could talk forever about this because I think there are so many different routes that you could go down. But where can people find you if they're now listening to this and they're like, oh my days, like I want me some of this, like I want to live a more fulfilled, like happier, like less anxious life without having to rely on these crutches or, whatever you want to call them in my life to make me feel good. Like, I just want to feel good, kind of more of the time rather than just in those times. Where can they find you?
Yes. So they can come to my website, which is brookelevitt.com, BROOKELEA, V as in Victor, ITT.com. And that'll take you there. I'm also on Instagram. I've historically not been a social media gal. I haven't had it in like over 10 years before starting this business. So I don't check it obsessively, but you can absolutely, find me there. And in fact, the longer it takes me to respond to you, the better, I'm doing on my own path. And I live this lifestyle every single day. But I'm very accessible. So that's where I would go. And I would recommend two options within my kind of world. And then there's a ton of information out there. It's just, I don't know how many people want to read neuroscience books and are interested in, doing the nitty-gritty research on it, but there's lots of information by like very prestigious institutions. Like this isn't something I've like made up. Yeah. So I'm leaning on the shoulders of many others that have done the research. But yeah, so for people that are like super serious, that are really interested in long lasting results, and that's really the critical piece here. Like I don't like to do things that are yo-yo, right? Like I know I can lose 15 pounds in, 2 months if I had to, but like, I know I'm going to gain it back. So I'm not into that anymore. Maybe y'all are, but that's up to you. I'm too old for that shit now. And so I'm over that. So if you want these long lasting results, and you're really radically responsible for yourself, I would recommend my Pleasure versus pain program. It's 10 weeks. It's interactive. We have a live coaching call every week. It's $900 US, or 2 payments of $475. And that's where we're going to really get into the nitty gritty. If you want to dip your toe, and this is very fun for people, I have a game that runs every month. It's $27 US. It's really easy to get started. I call it a dopamine detox, knowing that like it's not gonna like get you to the finish line, but I sure as shit can assure you that you're gonna be like, holy crap, I had no idea what I was getting myself into with this environment when you actually start tracking it.
I love it. I love it. And do you know what I love about all of this? Because I found myself immersed into like the biohacking world last year. And I think it is similar in that it's one of those rabbit holes that you just like, you start to hear about, you get intrigued, and then like before you know it, you're like, God knows where, you're like, I freaking love it here.
Yeah, it's a fun place to play. And like, I think, you know, for me, my little curiosity bubbles go off left and right in this space. And if you're applying in it, biohacking might not be what gets you excited, but maybe it's, I don't know, learning about tarot or how to become an expert marksman. I don't know what gets you going, but that's the whole point, is that you'll find out.
Yeah, I love it. I love it so much. So everyone listening, we will put all of those links in the show notes below. So don't panic if you're driving or anything. You can just go check it out below. Be sure to follow Brooke on Instagram. Check out those offers as well. $27, like it's a no-brainer, isn't it? Just go and try it, dip your toe and see the difference for yourself. Because I think we can talk about things to the end of the earth, but experience it yourself and then make your own decision, right? I love this so much. Thank you so, so much, Brooke. This has been really amazing for me as well. I'm just like, I love this so much. So thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing all of your goodness. And until next time, we will see you all soon. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.